Everybody. So in this video, we're going to talk about arterioles, capillaries, and we should really talk about venules as well. So before we talk about the specifics of what's going on at this level, we should do a little bit of terminology here. So an arteriole is like a smaller artery. So imagine arteries are like a highway. They're larger. They carry a lot of blood, right? As time goes on, they're going to continue to branch out and get smaller until eventually they get small enough to where we give them a different name. And in this case, my picture's not that great. In this case, we call these arterioles. These arterioles are like very small arteries that carry oxygenated blood towards the capillary, just as you see here. So here's an arteriole, and it continues to get smaller and smaller. Eventually, it becomes a capillary. And these capillaries are very small blood vessels that are really small and thin and have the ability to allow oxygen to go out of the blood and into whatever cell is needed in this area. So let's pretend this capillary specifically is in the eye. The eye is going to take the oxygen from this capillary, the blood from the capillary, and then put the CO2 that it had used, right, for cellular respiration back into the blood to be carried out. So oxygen leaves the blood to go into the cell, and CO2 leaves the cell and goes into the blood. So the capillaries where all that happens. If this were to continue, you would see that this capillary is going to continue getting larger afterwards and become a venule, which is the smaller version of a vein. A bunch of venules are going to come together and create a vein, right? So it's it's a hierarchy of blood vessels. You also see here they have these little sphincters, which are types of muscles that surround the capillary and the arteriole. And this is used to help squeeze the blood through to make sure that the blood can get through these really small blood vessels. Right? So, I mean, they get so small that the pressure starts to decrease too. So, you got to squeeze them through to make sure the blood gets through the capillaries because they're extremely important. Here's just a cross section of an arteriole. And another example of a arterial wall as it's relaxed and as it contracts. So you can see the wall here gets much smaller when it contracts. When that happens, just think of it kind of like a hose, right? So if you have a hose and it has an opening like the number one right here, as I just skipped, my apologies. So like if you have a hole like number one, a really large hole, a lot of water is going to go out of the hose, right? But if you squeeze the hose or if you put your finger over the top of the hose, the opening is going to get smaller, like here on the right. It's going to just so the same thing as squeezing it, same thing as contraction. So what happens is the pressure of the water coming out of the hose is going to increase, right? So again, if you go in your backyard, or if you go to someone's house who has a hose, just put your finger over the end of the hose and the water is going to start squirting out. Same thing as this. You squeeze or contract the blood vessel, the pressure is going to increase and therefore push more blood throughout the blood vessel. And again, here's another picture of a normal arteriole. If you have any questions on arterioles, venules, or capillaries, please let me know.